maybe we should start with just why, like some of the stuff you were saying earlier.
Okay, so I decided that the Sudbury model was going to be phenomenal for my daughters because I unschool them currently, which just means that I let them do what they want to do, and I kind of go along with it and help with, like, back up what they're wanting to learn with whatever I can come up with. But I'm super social, and I have a lot of friends that are unschoolers who are also social, and I have a lot of friends and parents who have to work. They don't have the privilege that I do to stay at home with my kids. But they wanted that student-directed model, and it doesn't exist in Nashville unless you can afford to stay at home with your kids and take them on adventures and do fun stuff. So I started researching, and I had a friend who unschooled, and she recommended the Sudbury model, and her son was in a school in Maryland. And I was like, what is Sudbury? And so I started reading, and it started about 40 years ago in Framingham, Massachusetts. A group of parents in the late 60s were really disheartened with everything going on in society, kind of like what's happening now. And they decided that they were going to start this school, and that it was going to be kind of unschooling in community, completely child-centered, child-directed, learner-directed, motivated, but then with a democratic overlay. And that blew my mind, because I feel that one of the biggest problems we have in society right now is that people are not engaged in our democracy. We're seeing that kind of spiraling out of control. And wouldn't that be amazing if we had kids that were in charge of their learning and were working in community in a democratic model? So I started reading, and it was like mind-blowing. I was like hysterically crying as I'm reading this book about the Sudbury model, and I'm like, why didn't we have this in Nashville? And so I started a group, and within a couple of months, about 100 families had joined this Facebook group, and we started meeting, and next thing you know, we have a founders group, and we're raising money, and everybody is on board with starting this model that can be for those of us that unschool but want to do it together, but also people that maybe can't afford to not, just to leave their lives and their jobs. And then also a segment of the population who are in public schools, who are in private schools, and they are not to their greatest advantage. And maybe they didn't know that they had an alternative, and that there should be an alternative like this in every state, in every city in the nation. And so that's what we're going to fight for. But there's a lot of laws that we have to kind of jump through some hoops to do it. And so we are going to be starting a church so that we can be a church-related school, so that then we can apply for an exemption and not have the state control testing and that sort of thing. And so that's where we are this year, and we're hoping that we'll start in 2017. So that is the plan.
Cool. What else? Maybe what a good question would be, like, why this model versus maybe like some other models? Like, I don't really know but we looked at like some websites for like Montessori's in Nashville and stuff when we were doing this. Right.
Okay. So, why Sudbury versus other models? So in Tennessee and in Nashville specifically, there are already Montessori schools that go up through the 8th grade. There are preschools that are Montessori. There's play-based kindergartens and preschools. But there is no model that is completely free to learn, which a scholar named Peter Gray wrote a book that is called Free to Learn, and it is a whole kind of research ideal that is the child has complete freedom in the course of the day to direct their learning as they see fit. And in a Montessori model, there is that freedom, but then you still have to accomplish certain things in a certain time frame. So even though you're free, you still have a list of things that you have to do. And if you don't want to do math this week, well, you can do all the other things, but by Friday at 3:00 you have to do math. So, the idea of unschooling, which is that if a child wants to read all day, the child can read all day. If the child wants to, this is controversial for a lot of people, but if the child wants to play a video game all day, the child can play a video game all day. And if the child gets a headache from the video game, then they experience that, and then they understand, oh, well, maybe I need to take a break but it's giving them the freedom and trusting the child. And I think that's something that's missing from childhood a lot, is that trust of the child to direct what they want to do. And so the research has shown over 40 years that the kids that come out of these schools they have life down, and they don't have to learn how to do life. And then they also have this ability to learn. And in our environment, in our society today, with technology and all these opportunities to get information for ourselves, we no longer need to sit in a classroom and have information thrown at us that we maybe don't have any interest in. But we do need the ability to figure out how to get that information and how to understand it. And even more importantly, the democratic model, which is the children are running the school and the staff members are running the school, and they're making the rules, and they have a judiciary committee where if a rule gets broken or if they don't like what's happening among their peers, that they're figuring out how to solve it. It takes away this hierarchy and puts everybody on an equal playing field. And so they're learning how to negotiate and how to compromise and how to work together in a community. And I think that's why we wanted that to happen. We think that kids should have that opportunity in every community in our country. And a lot of other states have these models. They have the idea of alternative schools that are free schools, not alternative reform. And I think sometimes those get kind of put together in the same place, and maybe they should, because if more reform schools were this kind of alternative school, I think we'd have a lot more, functioning human beings that are living with dignity and integrity, as opposed to how they're treated in a lot of respects in our current mainstream school system. So we're not an industrial society anymore, so let's stop having schools that are industrialized, and let's start letting them have the freedom to figure out how to do the things that they want to do, that they find joy in doing. And then you have kids that grow up joy-filled. And so we wanted kids in Nashville to do that, because kids in a lot of other states have this, and there are lots of different schools that are free schools. Some maybe not the Sudbury model, but just democratic schools or free schools, or schools that have more of this or that. But the Sudbury really gives the complete freedom. So there's no well, you're a free school, but then we also need you to do this, this, and this. And so that is kind of why we are following the lines of the Sudbury.
So if you could convince other people to jump on board with this model, with this school model, in X amount of time, say 20 seconds, how would you do so?
Okay. So we have an opportunity to change the face of society and to create a generation of children that will rise up and be the change that we want to see in the world. So why wouldn't we run to do that, to save our society?
That was perfect. That was awesome.